Welcome to the Web Graffiti. Today we have Drew Hall with us, and we are going to talk about convergence, among other things. How's everything going, Drew?
It's good. It's good. Just staying busy.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so let's begin. Um, how did convergence come about?
I had actually I had done at this point in my career. I directed three movies with a writer slash investor, and he was gracious enough to allow me to kind of pursue one of my own. He just gave me a couple of conditions. He said, "Hey, okay, you've done three for me. I'd like for you to you can do your movie now, but I will finance something that's a thriller or a horror movie." And so I kind of bluffed my way into it and said, "I have both. I have a horror thriller. It's called," and I didn't have the name Convergence at the time. It was a different title. And he said, "Okay, well let me read it in a couple of weeks." And at that point, I had working on a script, but not necessarily what we see in the movie. I had been working on a project. A dear friend of mine died from cancer, fortunately, and I often go turn to writing as sort of a catharsis. And so I had an idea and just started pulling pieces from that and pulling pieces from my own past, put it together, and pitched the investor the idea, and he loved it. Thought it was really great, really fun and innovative. And without spoiling anything, I originally had come up with two ideas. It was basically the same movie of Convergence, just told from two different perspectives, and basically two different timelines that would meet at a certain point in the film. And so, the first two acts of these two different movies would be completely different, but the third act of both movies was exact same. And the idea was to let audiences have two different experiences on the same story. He liked the idea, but financially he didn't like the idea, so we just pulled it down into one movie, which is what you get with Convergence.
Cool, that's cool. Okay, so you both wrote and directed Convergence. Which task was harder and why?
Um, I don't. I guess the real challenge for me, the directing side was fun. A lot of the cast, pardon me, a lot of the crew I had worked with on previous films, so we had our shorthand in place. So directing on that side of making creative decisions was pretty fluid. I also had a very wonderful producer named Scott Robinson, who it was our first film together, but he and I just really click as a team. We know how to kind of push each other's buttons and encourage each other at the same time to make sure things are getting done on time, under budget. And so that part, the directing side was easy and on the crew side. But then when it came to cast, I was really blessed with a very, very competent, intelligent, caring cast. They were very passionate
Mm-hmm.
about the project. So the directing side was I would call it easier. So the writing part was harder, not from the actual construction of writing, but being the writer on set, watching an idea. Sometimes you write an idea and you know it's going to change because you get there and you're like, oh, there's no way that's going to work. And becoming the writer that had to change his own ideas every once in a while was part of probably the hardest thing I had to deal with.
So you're saying that at times you have to be changing certain things on set.
Oh yeah, look, there's a scene in the movie between the nurse character played by Chelsea Brulin and
Mm.
Clayton Crawford's character named Ben, and that scene had to get rewritten like in the afternoon of when we were supposed to film it because originally that's another character's introduced there, but because of this insane series of really weird events that occurred, it prevented us from getting to that shot that day, and he had a hard out, meaning he had to leave the next day. So I had to rewrite that entire scene in order to just accommodate two actors as opposed to three actors. And it kind of, it was crazy. It was, I've already blocked for it. I've already lined up shots and ideas, and so you have to kind of go backwards and assemble. Luckily, Clayne and Chelsea were such good actors; they carried the scene, and it's actually one of my favorite scenes in the movie. She's really creepy in that scene, where she's just kind of standing there staring out the window with him. That's like written on the fly as fast as possible to make something to fix something on the next day. So yeah.
So does it pose a problem sometimes when you have to change in between things, you know?
Yes, but you know what? That's part of filmmaking. I've never been on a movie where there weren't, at least on the ones I've made, and even some of the ones I've worked on, where there weren't massive changes that occurred. I mean, there's so many variables and so many things going on at one time. It could be as small as the weather. Suddenly it's raining, and the scene prior, you shot 2 days ago, and it was sunny outside. You've got to figure out how to deal with that. There's a lot of challenges in independent filmmaking where, if you're not on a soundstage, you don't have all the control in the world. So, yeah, God comes along and changes the entire plan on you. You got to be ready to.
I agree, I agree. Okay, Drew, are you here?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm still here.
Okay,
Sorry,
no problem. Okay,
coffee.
so there is definitely a religious message in Convergence. Was this something that was intentional?
Um, I- in It's a tricky question. That's a great question and a tricky answer is what I should say. The truth is, I wasn't trying to be preachy by any means. I wasn't trying to throw any sort of to be overly preachy is
Mm,
what I should say. The content did dictate because I wanted to write about something that was very true to me and true where I grew up. The character of Daniel Donner, this religious zealot that was so aggressive, imposing his what he believes his beliefs on people by using bombs. That's based on truth. That happened where I grew up. There were a series of abortion clinics and women's clinics bombings, and people were killed in the name of God. And so I don't agree with that as a spiritual person. I identify with Christianity, but as a spiritual person, I think killing is killing. There is no justification for it. So I did have to work it in because I wanted to tell that little bit of truth about my, from my perspective. And so it did have to exist. There had to be mentions of God. And the other part of me is I like to kind of challenge the status quo. I find it funny that anytime we bring in religion, suddenly, a lot of times, the instant reaction is, oh, it's got to go in this certain box. Well, you know what? Everybody interprets, God or the universe or a higher power differently. So I don't necessarily agree that we have to put it in a box and it has to be exactly this way. And if it's talking about religion, it must say these exact things. Instead, let's
true,
explore
true.
the idea of what it can be. Because my experience with religion is, I guarantee, different than yours, and
Definitely.
yours is different than the other guys. So why not let it just be a unique experience that is just one perspective?
Okay. It was recently announced that your film star, Clay Crawford, is going to be in Fox Lethal Weapon television reboot as Mel Gibson's character. What was your reaction to this?
Jealousy, lots and lots of jealousy. I Lethal Weapon is as a film series is my favorite cop series. One, two, and three. Four is okay, but I love one, two, and three. And the fact that I've worked with Clay, I know what he's going to bring. I mean, not totally, but I know what he can bring to the character of Riggs. And the fact that he's on screen sharing his screen time with Damon Wayans as Murtaugh. I mean, that is just awesome to me. It gives me goosebumps of excitement. I'm not a big reboot guy, but you know what? If you're going to do it, at least do it, differently and make it cool. And I think they've really come up with a great idea on bringing Klain in to that mix. So yeah, I'm super jealous. I already offered him. I called him the other day and told him if he needs someone to just come out to LA and wash his car or be his PA, I'll gladly do it just so I can pay him.
Well, maybe he would. Maybe he will,
Hey, you never know.
True.
You never know.
Okay, so you have produced many projects with your company, Frame 29 Films. Is there a general message you like to convey with these joint films?
I think our goal has always been the same, which is to make independent films that somewhat challenge the status quo and aren't um, aren't trying to emulate always the stories of others. So we try and find original ideas and explore those. And it really Frame 29 really started with Sons of Liberty, which was a fine script in and of itself. But we wanted to look at a little bit different way of showing an action film. We didn't have the traditional super romance in it. We didn't have a lot of we had a lot of non-traditional elements to kind of explore that.
True.
And so we like to try and take on movies that are different, that maybe at the end of it the audience has a conversation. The real goal is if we can have someone have a conversation about what they just saw, not like a critique of that was awesome or that was bad, but more like a social or political or just a general convo about it. That's what we're after.
Okay. How do you pick the projects that you choose to make?
Um, it- Weirdly enough, I think sometimes the projects kind of pick me or pick us. We go after. We have a certain style that we like. Horst and I both really enjoy science fiction. We both really enjoy sort of fantasy elements, and we enjoy supernatural stuff. So a lot of times, and action. And so a lot of times those pieces come across our desk. We'll get a script or whatever the case is. But the stuff that typically resonates is if we can relate to it and or we see that it can be for the audience something that they'll smile about or have a conversation about. It follows in line. So it has to evoke some sort of emotion in us before we'll even consider it.
Okay. Um, you said that you like supernatural films. Which film is your favorite in that genre?
The Shining. I
Ah, you
I
have
think
taste.
Yeah, I think The Shining. Well, to me, The Shining is the scariest film ever made. I can barely make my way through it. There's something in that movie that he did just in film language, right? Just using cinema.
Hmm.
That movie confuses me. It gives me anxiety. It puts oppression on. It's an amazing experience. It's just it takes a lot of emotion out of me to watch that film because I love it so much. That's that, and I like a lot of the stuff that like Blumhouse is doing. I think they have a very cool. They get to go play with lots of different ideas. You know, they get to make Insidious. They get to make The Purge. They get to make Whiplash. They have a real cool model as well. And only one of those is not supernatural. Whiplash is not supernatural. Although as a drummer, the guy that was doing the drumming was almost supernatural. He was so good, but still, different story.
Do you like The Conjuring or anything from James Wan?
I do. I think The Conjuring is for a modern horror film. I think it's one of the best modern horror films made. I think James Wan is super, super talented. Um, I'm curious to see what he'll do with what is he? Is he on Fast Eight now as well? Isn't he
Yeah,
the
I
director?
think so, and I think he's working on The Conjuring too. There's also
And
another supernatural film he's working on for Warner Brothers. I can't remember the name.
Lights Out. Was it
Yeah,
Lights Out?
Lights Out. Yeah, that's it.
Oh my God, have you seen the trailer for it
I've
yet?
seen it. Yes, definitely. It's very good. It's very good.
Oh, it's great because who doesn't have that idea that there's something in the darkness? That's brilliant. I
True,
mean, well done.
true.
So,
And
love it.
he's also set to do Aquaman as
Yeah.
well.
Yep.
Okay. I've read that you do a lot of business in Alabama. Why is that? What is the biggest obstacle you've had to overcome with shooting there? Let's say that you wouldn't face, something you wouldn't face in Hollywood.
Sure. I think the bigger thing is honestly is equipment. There's not a ton of gear in the state of Alabama, meaning like dollies and cranes and all that kind of stuff. And luckily, New Orleans is 2 hours away, where there's plenty of it, and you can rent it. Atlanta's 4 or 5 hours away. Again, if they don't have it in New Orleans, you go to Atlanta. So equipment's the biggest challenge. In all honesty, sometimes there's the trope of Alabama question mark. An actor. Clay told me that story. Clay was like, man, I saw somebody shooting a movie in Alabama, and I didn't know what I was going to step into, and we laugh about it because he's from Alabama. But once cast and crew get to know us, they realize that we're very much a business driven thing, but we get to embrace Southern hospitality, and we try and treat everybody, you know, as if they're family, and that's what the kind of thing we've built. So shooting here, the other side of it is the tax incentives. So the state of Alabama has they've changed a little bit, but they when we first started, they had a very generous tax incentive, and that has a lot to do with filmmaking because it is a business, and you're trying
Hmm.
to save money and find spots, and the tax incentives in Alabama were pretty solid. So that was a big side of it. And then there's a studio here that we partnered with that's run by our executive producer, and he had this great facility and said, "Hey, if you guys want to come in, I'll let's make some movies together. And here's your base of operations." And I mean, it's as good as any smaller studio that you can find in the country. It's a beautiful place, giant green screen, soundstage, camera equipment. It's awesome. So it just made sense for us at the time to maybe try something a little bit different. We were going to try and tell different stories, so here we are.
Yeah, you just mentioned green screen. Do you prefer to shoot in green screen or practical?
I'm all about practical. I am one of the people, and Horst is as well. Now, to set that up, I want to explain that Horst worked for almost 10 years or so, or 7 years for Weta Digital down in New Zealand. He worked on the Chronicles of Narnia, The Hobbit, so he's very familiar with the VFX process of making films. He's a VFX artist, and so Horst and I share a very similar opinion. We believe that green screen and visual effects should only be used when you cannot physically create it yourself. Meaning, if you cannot make it practically, then yes, you have to do CG or green screen shooting. Otherwise, we try and keep everything as organic as we can because I think that's the kind of science fiction I grew up. I'm a Star Wars kid,
Hmm.
and they made all of their effects. They didn't have a lot of CG They had no computer generated really items in it, and so I still appreciate that level of detail in filmmaking because I think then you get artisans hand building it, and then that prop or that character or that set or whatever has a story behind it because they physically made it, as opposed to sometimes when you make it in 3D, there's not as much of a hands-on process, in my opinion. Although I love CG, and there's times you have to use it. I used a lot of it in a film we did called Ether. There's no airships like we had designed. They don't exist. So we did have to use VFX there to do that.
Definitely. Okay, so we know you're working on Nigel and Oscar versus the Sasquatch. When should we expect to see this movie?
I think it's going to start doing its little festival run shortly. It will be out this year for on VOD and all that stuff. I don't have the exact dates yet. We're still kind of sorting through it. Hopefully, it's out this year. It could be, one more year, but it's in the process of coming out. So hopefully, you'll see it sometime this year. And it's pretty funny. It's a nice nerdy family comedy, family friendly
So
comedy.
it's
If
like
you will.
a different tone from Convergence.
Completely the other spectrum. It is
Yeah.
Convergence is heavy, it's dense, it's got a lot of personal emotion invested into it. And Nigel and Oscar is when I needed to like step away from. I put everything I had into Convergence, and Nigel and Oscar came along. It was a great script, very funny, very just like it's like a cheeseburger. It's just good. It's just good. It's not like a crazy meal. There's no crazy stuff involved. It's just delicious meat and cheese.
Definitely.
I'm hungry, by the way. That's why that came.
No breakfast.
Yeah, no
Okay.
breakfast.
Ethan Embry. I liked him in Convergence. Do you know what else he's planning to do right now? Or if he's doing anything at the moment?
Yeah, I think he's working on. I'm sure he's got another feature in the works for sure. If you haven't seen a companion, in my opinion, to some of his cool work, is a movie called Cheap Thrills that I would suggest checking out. Really good. I think he's on a Netflix show as well called Frankie and Grace.
I think I know that. I've seen the trailer. Didn't I watch it? But I've seen.
Yeah, he's on. And it's a little bit back to his comedy chops. Um, Frankly, I won't be surprised if that guy hasn't picked up, a huge project at some point. He's so talented and kind and fun to hang around that I just don't know why. It may not have happened for him yet, but I think you'll see him in a big film very soon.
Yeah, for some it takes time.
It does, and he had an early start. Like, he had at the beginning of his career. Obviously, he had a lot of stuff come around. So I think we'll see him reemerge as a juggernaut shortly.
Definitely. Okay, so Batman v Superman Drew.
Oh yeah.
This movie, critics destroyed. I think it's 20 something percent on Rotten Tomatoes right now.
Right.
People are destroying. Have you seen it?
I have seen it. I saw it the Friday count at like 10 o'clock in the morning.
And what are your thoughts? Because I've seen it and I left, what can you say, mixed. I'm very mixed about it. Sometimes I'm not sure what to think. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So here's my thing. I'm not let me preface this to say I like superhero movies. I like movies. Spectacles are fun. And I'm not like an art house guy. I will go see a big budget movie over in some cases, a big budget movie over art house cinema just because I enjoy it. But I walked out of that theater really disappointed in what I had watched. I felt like it was way too long. I feel like there's a way better way to tell that story that's much more effective. I don't need to see Batman's parents killed again, although out of all of Batman's parents' killings, this is my favorite because it was closest to some of the comic book work. I think you could have just shown that through a flashback. I think everybody going to see Batman v Superman knows that Batman's parents were killed. If they don't, who cares? Like, that's not your problem as a storyteller, in my opinion. I thought the action was really well done. I just had big story issues, and I'm not a big DC Comics reader. I think I have a total of 40 issues of Batman comics and 2 Superman comics in my entire. I always thought Metropolis and Gotham City were not close together.
I thought it as well. Yeah.
And it bothered me because to me it made a logic bomb go off that was, if Gotham City is literally across the bay from Metropolis, why doesn't Superman just protect both? Because he apparently has the ability to go save Lois Lane in I think they're in Africa. He can he can zip over there and do that. And then that created a new problem for me because then you're telling me he can zip over there and do that, but he can't even know where his own mother was taken. Come on.
No, you just brought that to my mind. I was not looking at that. Definitely.
Well, and then I have another question. Maybe you can help me and I'm not attacking anyone. Zack Snyder is a very talented director. These are just questions for me. The sequence, and I should have said spoiler alert, but you can do that if you want to.
Yeah, we can. I think the movie has been spoiled a million times.
So Superman saves Lois Lane in Africa, but before he gets there, some mercenary dudes shoot all the Africans that are there except for one, and Superman comes and he saves her and I guess kills that guy. I would
Yeah,
imagine.
I would imagine he died as well. Definitely.
So
He does.
why was the bullet important?
Well, they were trying to say that the bullet was um it was high grade bullet that should not have been sold to anyone at that moment. I'm not sure how the bullet is important. I'm really trying
Right. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
because she was trying to make this big importance about the bullet, but it did not add up in the overall story.
But then they brought up the bullets being something to do with Superman, and it's like Superman uses guns? No. And they could have made the bullets make sense if Superman shows up, they start shooting with bullets, the bullets bounce off of him and happen to kill all the dudes around him. Then yeah, you could actually charge Superman with murder because he uses power to. That would have been a cool story point, right? Not all the guys, maybe just one person dies from a bullet that bounces off Superman. I would make an argument that Superman could have been murdered because he has the ability to stop. Then I'm going to buy into the storyline. Lex Luthor was confusing. I didn't know if I was watching
Yeah,
who I was watching.
yeah, the thing is, the problem I had with Lex Luthor was he was like a maniac.
Yeah,
You know
he's
what I
all
mean?
over the place.
I'm not sure. I think it's not just Eisenberg's fault. I think it's all about the script because I believe he's a good actor and he can do a lot better job. But there's one thing though. He was doing the social network acting, speaking
Yeah.
very fast. There are times I could not understand what he was saying.
Yeah, there was definitely an Aaron Sorkin speed to his dialogue. Again, he's a tremendous. Everybody in that movie is a great actor. There's not a bad actor in that film. There's some choices were a little different than maybe I would have gone.
True. I
But
mean, Batman killed about a dozen people in this movie.
yeah, and okay, if they want to explore them, cool with it. It definitely makes a gray area, right? It puts it into a different space. But the other stuff that I had issue with is just some of the plot points were really forced. Like the introduction of the Justice League wasn't organic to me.
I agree with that as well. Yes.
And what bad guy? Like what are we in a James Bond movie from the '70s? The bad guy happens to have all of these files with logos created, by the way. That
You know, I'm also thinking about that right. I saw the logos, but I did not But you're just saying it right now. How did he create all these logos and?
yeah, my joke now is to say that basically what Lex was doing is so Lex is this smart of a businessman. He actually created logos for all the superheroes so that when they come out, Lex may be in prison, but they're gonna have to pay him licensing fees. So he's a genius.
Definitely a genius. Definitely. Doomsday. I
Oh God.
thought the CGI was very bad. It was rubbish. I did not like it. I did not like Doomsday's CGI design. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you? Pardon me. I mean, the whole movie felt rushed, and I kind of wonder if that scene was rushed, like to get it done or something. It just didn't feel like. I mean, look, we've seen trolls from like The Hobbit that look
Yeah, right.
fantastic,
That's true. And they
and
couldn't do something similar with Doomsday in this movie.
yeah, I don't, and I don't want to attack anybody's art. Maybe that was the best they could do, and I certainly can't do any. I can draw a stick figure, and that's what Doomsday would have been. He would
Yeah,
have,
yeah, yeah. But we have to understand this is Warner Brothers, and
right, but
they're trying to push out this universe.
right.
This movie is basically a catalyst to push everything forward. They needed come go.
I agree. I'm so confused at this point of what they've done to that world. With look, here's my thing. The beauty of having two cities is that you have Superman isolated in one for the most part, Batman isolated in the other for the most part. So when Batman decides, and let's say he was visiting Metropolis when all this happened, which would have made a much cooler storyline to me. Batman goes back home and he's now alone with his own. He's in Gotham, but he can't let go of that memory. Now I'm starting to believe that Batman has a reason why, because Batman's starting to have the same problem, the same complex, if you will, as Superman. Superman has the ability to save the entire world. Batman only has the ability to save the immediate area he's in. He can't run fast, right?
True.
So now he's suddenly like, wait a second, this guy could destroy us. Now I start to see a really good story unfolding. Next thing you know, Batman packs his crap up and goes to Metropolis and sets up base in Metropolis, trying to figure out how to stop Superman. I'm in. Now you've got me hooked. And you can do that in 1 hour. Then they go to war. And when they go to war, poof, we're into hour 2. And the movie's only 2 hours long. We cut 30 minutes out of the film, problem solved.
True. 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 No. When this movie ended with Superman's death,
Oh,
to
yeah.
be honest, I did not care.
Of course not.
I did not care. I did not feel any emotional connection to these characters. And when you put in the Superman dies storyline, everyone in the theater needed to care,
Yep.
and no one cared. No one cared.
Nope.
So
I think part of the problem I have is how they set it up. They do a lot of there's a lot of visual references to Jesus Christ. So a lot of them are
yes, this is something they've attached to Superman over the years. with his
Yeah.
age like he's 32 and so forth.
And then, well, there's a famous painting of Christ being removed from I forget who, it might have been David, but Christ being removed from the cross,
Mhm.
and he's swaddled, he's got a swaddle around him, and there is, I think it's Joseph or somebody, and then there's Mary standing, and you have that exact same image to a T when they were lowering Superman down. Batman's lowering him down.
Mhm.
His cape is swaddled around him just like the painting. It's almost an
Yeah,
identical image.
interesting.
And
Interesting.
they did the same thing in Man of Steel. There's a shot where Jesus comes out of one of the spaceships and he's in the crucifixion pose. It's just like,
Mhm.
really, if you want to suggest it, that's fine. But visually, just enforcing the idea, it just seems much to me. It's just
Sure,
too much.
sure, definitely, definitely. Yeah, so I think that a lot of people right now they have less faith in the upcoming Justice League, which is in 2017, because Zack Snyder is attached to it. I think you have a petition right now where fans are saying that Warner Brothers should remove him from the DC properties and everything. Do you think this is something Warner should do, or they should leave him be?
That's tough. I mean, I don't think at all that Zack Snyder is the problem. If people want to play the finger pointing game,
Mhm.
I actually feel like the issue comes down to the screenplays. And here's my evidence. Zack Snyder's, what was it, Dawn of the Dead? Is that right?
Yes, yes, that's it.
Fantastic screenplay, great movie, totally did what it was supposed to do. It was scary as all get out. It had all the necessary elements, and it worked, right? 300 actually told a cohesive story. Yeah, it was a
Yeah,
lot of
and
fun.
Watchmen. Do you see
And
Watchmen?
Watchmen told a cohesive story. So the point is, Zack Snyder can tell a great story. I think the material needs to be refined to a point of not just being a spectacle. It needs to have, Kevin Smith said best, it needs to have heart, humor, and spectacle. And that's what the movie lacked. It had spectacle for sure, but it certainly didn't have heart or humor.
Interestingly enough, Chris Terrio, Oscar-winning screenwriter, he was the one who wrote the script for Batman v Superman, and he's also the one who is involved with Justice League Part One.
Right?
So do you think that he just slipped up as an Oscar winning screenwriter or what?
Sometimes it could be that, but I mean, at the same time, having written, everybody has a boss somewhere down the road, and somebody could have panicked, somebody could have put too many ideas in. I mean, there's a number of variables. They could have all believed this was the best idea, and it just didn't resonate. Sometimes the thing about film and telling a story is it doesn't matter how good of the concept is in your head. Audiences just don't like it. It's the reality of it, and you try and make the best thing you can, but sometimes it works. Um, I I would just look at the source material as I would go back and look at the source material. How do we make this? How do we put in heart into this world? And I understand that DC has decided to take a little bit more of a darker, I'm air quoting, reality sort of look. But every once in a while, the sun being out and it being a sunny day is that's reality too. So it doesn't always have to be that bleak, dark, overcast vibe. I think that's actually hurting him. That's where Marvel, I believe, is doing a little bit better. Is that their stuff has they you're going to the movie to be entertained, not to be reminded of the harshness of this world. I know how harsh this world is. What I need are heroes to save me from that harshness, even if
That's
it's
true.
on the screen.
That's
So,
true. But the thing is, I think the problem with Batman v Superman is that they're trying to tell a drama type of story,
mhm.
similar to Watchmen, but the story failed to hold up. Because
Right,
you can have superhero movies dark and brooding, but the drama need to be on point.
right,
Just like the Dark Knight trilogy, that's a drama. You did not find a lot of humor in that movie, but it worked
right.
because the story was on point and it was not here with Batman v Superman. So they,
No, I
they,
agree.
they can definitely go ahead with their dark tone, but keep the story strong. That's
Yeah,
it.
but I think it started to me.
Started off right. To me, it started
Yeah,
fine.
and even with the Batman film, Love Begins. I love The Dark Knight. I didn't care for the third one, whatever that one. I can't remember what it's called. Because I felt like they tried to cram too much stuff into the movie. If you
Mhm.
look at the first two Batman movies, they focused on a singular character's perspective. We had Batman's perspective,
Mhm.
and then in the second one, I feel like the movie kind of told more from the Joker's perspective.
True.
So we and if you go to the Dark Knight Returns or Rises or whatever it is, you have Bane's perspective, then you have Batman's perspective, you have Catwoman. It's just confusing. It's the same thing that happened in Batman v
I
Superman.
agree. I
There's
agree.
too many perspectives. Just give me one. Tell me the story from Batman's perspective. Batman v Superman should be told from Batman's side. And then suddenly you have a much better. We understand why Batman's doing. We understand it does create the emotional stakes that Superman dies. instead of trying to force a lot of angles on us. So,
Okay. Well, Drew, thank you for speaking with me today
thank you
about
very much.
all these matters. I hope that you go out and watch Suicide Squad or even Civil War is coming up.
Yep, yep. I'll go see all those. I
Okay.
promise.
Okay, man. Thank you very much. It's
Thank
been
you.
a pleasure talking with you, man. So, we'll talk again some other time.
That's good.
Okay. Thank you.
Cheers.